Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay, we are getting started. So if you're having some lingering conversations, either step out into the hallway or take a seat. We are so excited to have you all here for a candidate forum for Fresno City Council District 6. Thank you to our candidates for being here tonight. My name is Danielle Bergstrom. I'm the Executive Director and Managing Editor of Fresnoland. All four of the organizations hosting this forum tonight are nonpartisan, nonprofit organizations, all of us with the mission to make sure that the public is educated on civic issues. We will not be endorsing in any of the races. And with that, I will turn it over to Joe Moore.
Thank you so much, Donnie, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Joe Moore, President and General Manager of KVPR, Valley Public Radio, and we want to thank all the candidates for being here tonight as well. This is such a vital part of democracy here in our community, and of course, thank you for being here. Tonight, we are also pleased to have CMAC with us, taping and streaming this forum, and there will be a link to rewatch the recording on the CMAC website, and I'm sure you can also find that at Fresnoland and at kvpr.org as well after this event. This evening, we have two members of the League of Women Voters of Fresno to guide our forum. The League has been supporting democracy for over 80 years in Fresno and over 103 years nationally. Marianne Cast, our moderator, maintains control over the forum from start to finish. She has met with the candidates who have all agreed to tonight's rules. Neither of them have seen or reviewed tonight's questions. Robin Sharrow, our timekeeper, is seated in the front row. And I'll turn it over to Marianne now.
Tonight is your opportunity to hear the candidates' views on pivotal issues for the city of Fresno. We're using a question and answer format, and we will conclude at 8:45. To help us remain in this tight schedule, we ask that you help us out in two ways. First, please silence your electronic devices. And next, we ask that you listen respectfully to each candidate's answers. Many of you may support one candidate over another. We ask the candidates and audience treat each other with courtesy and respect. In other words, no booing, no hollering, no standing up with signs and that sort of thing. The candidates have agreed to no personal attacks. If they are efficient in their answers, we'll have time for additional questions. The order that the candidates will answer questions will rotate so that each candidate will have an opportunity to answer a question first. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and at the end, we will allow 1 minute for each candidate to give a final wrap-up and statement. It's now let me introduce the candidates. From your right, we have Raj Sodhi Lane, a banker. We have Nick Richardson, military reservist and consultant. And on your right, Molly Fagundes Johnson, a consultant. So we welcome these candidates. We have, in fact, invited Roger Bonekdar, an attorney who is the fourth candidate in this race, but did not receive his response to participate. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the people with all the questions for our candidates tonight. We have Juliana Morano, journalist with Fresnoland, and Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado, the news director from KVPR. So with our first question will go to Nick Richardson, and it comes from Juliana.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, let's get right to it. Fresno has long debated whether to continue allowing suburban development on the fringe of the city versus addressing the city's housing crisis by building on vacant lots and underutilized parcels within city limits. Copper River is the last frontier of new single-family development in District 6, though developers are increasingly building apartments on vacant lots in the district. City leaders recently said they were putting the controversial Southeast Development Area plan on hold due to multi-billion-dollar infrastructure costs. What is your position on how the city should grow? And how do you think we should pay for infrastructure needed to support new development?
Juliana, thank you for the question. Thank you for having me, not purposely scheduling this forum for when I was serving my country on drill. And honestly, the answer to that question is the city should prioritize building infrastructure for the people who need it. We should look at the individuals in the city who do need those homes, right? Do we have tens of thousands of, high-income families who are looking for a place to live in Fresno? Honestly, we don't. Do we have a housing crisis and those of mid to low income who are just stretching every single month to make rent and to be able to maybe afford a house for the first time? Yeah, that's who needs a house right now. Now, it doesn't help that the city puts in place these project labor agreements that force the prices of housing up, thereby transferring that cost down to the end homeowner. It makes it almost impossible to buy property. Before I moved back home to Fresno, I owned a house. And now my chances of moving home and buying a place here, they're slim to none right now. And if it happens to me, I know it's happening to hundreds and hundreds of people out in the city just like me. So I am all about developing in Southeast Fresno, but we need the infrastructure to do it. We need to make it cheaper for developers to build those homes there. And absolutely, if there are places within the city or within District 6 where we can build more affordable housing, places that people can actually move into. Now, let's not confuse this with building shelters or with building areas that are going to absolutely fall apart because we decide to neglect that, but housing that is affordable to people, responsible individuals who want to move into a house and take care of their community and contribute and pay their taxes and be able to pay a mortgage or rent that is actually sustainable, I'm all for. We don't need to cripple ourselves by stopping the building of our city, by stopping making homes that will reel people into Fresno. Because as they say, businesses follow homes. You want to bring business to Fresno? Allow people the opportunity to live here. Thank you.
Next to answer that same question will be Raj Sodhi Lane.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, we have a supply and demand issue in Fresno. We've got many people moving here from the Bay Area, from LA. Post-COVID has changed the dynamic for people not to have to work in the city, and so therefore they've made choices to come here. And it has caused our housing shortage. Some of the things that I would look at are, we do have some vacant land lots here in District 6. They're probably zoned commercial. Perhaps we should look at zoning some of those to be multi-use. What does that mean? That means that perhaps you would have retail on the bottom floor and you would have some type of residential on the second floor. Not everybody needs a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. You could be an empty nester from the Bay Area and quite happy in a 2-bedroom condo. So I'm all for development in Southeast Fresno, in Southwest Fresno, but I do believe in District 6 we also have some opportunities with some vacant lots. I would also look at some of the vacant large commercial real estate offices. I'll use Shaw Avenue as one example, but I know that they're all over the city, and perhaps look at some of those as interim housing until our new housing is built. Thank you.
And finally, Molly.
It's definitely a supply and demand issue. Fresno was recently rated the most affordable place to have a home in California. However, last week, the president of the real estate local association at Downtown Rotary, he shared that you have to have an income of at least $105,000 to own a home in Fresno. And so when we look at District 6 and the different territories that you mentioned as far as growth, there's definitely opportunities for a variety of housing, and that also includes high density housing There are some great examples across our country and also in California that have allowed individuals to become homeowners in specific markets. So I feel that that is something that our city will need to look at, especially if we look at the supply and demand of the current housing situation in Fresno.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Cress.
So Fresno has become less affordable since the start of the pandemic, especially for first-time home buyers and young working class people looking for an affordable place to rent. Rent and home prices have consistently gone up, and COVID-era funds to provide emergency rental assistance are also running out, and evictions have resumed to pre-pandemic levels. What should be the city's role in increasing the supply of affordable rental housing for people who either can't or don't want to buy a home? And what does that look like for District 6?
Raj, you'll be first to answer.
So that is somewhat related to question number 1, yes? I know that our city recently was awarded close to $300 million. So we can do some infill as far as, downtown Fresno, Chinatown. Housing vouchers have been issued. I know the city has all kinds of assistance programs, but I feel as though our city hasn't done a very good job in communicating all that's available to first-time renters. Let me see if I can elaborate on that a little bit. We might, as I said earlier, explore alternate type of housing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have anything else to add to that.
Molly, you're next.
So we're trying to find more housing in Fresno, really an extension of the first question. This is really a long-term solution. We're not going to be able to create infrastructure overnight. However, I really feel that this is handled at the federal level, and I know that there are local organizations and groups that are finding those resources for individuals that are trying to seek permanent housing. I'm more familiar with federal programs. I'm not currently aware as far as what our city council is implementing specifically.
Nick, go ahead.
So increasing affordable housing, 2 reasons we want to do this. 1, so we can bring more businesses to Fresno. And 2, because the only way to stop homelessness is to stop more homelessness from happening. So how do we get those houses out? What would I do? 2 things I'll tell you right now. 1 is a tax sharing agreement between the city and the county. It's currently 38 to 62. The city is footing 62%. The city is bringing in 38% of the taxes of this new development that we have that pushes out. This is inside the city of Fresno, while the county gets 62%. So fixing that tax share agreement, in fact, that tax share agreement is what drove Rick Ginder, who is one of the most prolific apartment builders in Fresno, out of town. He said he's not doing business in Fresno anymore. Why? Because it's so frustrating to do and costs so much, he cannot afford to make any money from building apartments in Fresno anymore. Do I think rent control is the answer, just writ large? No, I don't. I think that's painting with too large of a brush, and we're going to see more Rick Ginders. We're going to see more builders and developers who want to provide affordable apartments for people leave town. So the 2 things that I would like to do is 1, fix the tax sharing agreement between the city and the county, and 2, fix these project labor agreements which drive up prices for home builders and ultimately push that cost down to you and to me who are trying to rent or trying to buy new homes. Now, if we fix those 2 things, you've added to the affordability right there. And as long as we don't push forward with this leapfrog development, but progressive short-term development, piece by piece, parcel by parcel, spreading out from the city, building these new suburban communities, we're going to make that more affordable, and we can also keep up with the infrastructure of it. In Southeast Fresno, The fire department has such a hard time putting out fires over there because they just added thousands of new homes to their jurisdiction. That's not feasible. So with a responsible infrastructure plan, fixing the tax sharing agreement, in addition to fixing these PLAs that unfortunately our city council has the unions too deep in their pockets to do anything about, that's how we get affordable housing in Fresno. That's what I would like to do.
I'm sorry, Juliana, you have our next question, which goes to Molly.
Homelessness has been on the rise in Fresno County over the past decade, and yet record amounts of funding to help unhoused people have materialized here. There have been many critiques of the region's approach to addressing homelessness, namely the lack of coordination between the city, county, housing authority, and other agencies who provide housing and essential services. City leaders have said the county has delegated the responsibility of providing shelter and warming and cooling centers to the city. If elected, how would you approach homelessness differently, and what is the best role for the city to play?
Whether you're in District 6 or District 2, we see homelessness, and I really feel that in order to solve this issue, which has been going on for decades, I look at it as putting a puzzle together. And so I feel in Fresno, we have a lot of nonprofits. That's actually what I do. I'm a nonprofit advisor for several local, regional, state, and a national nonprofit. And I don't know if anybody in here is towards City Center, but they are doing a great job of different nonprofits coming together and working together to solve homelessness. I feel that's a piece of the puzzle, as well as our faith-based groups are very active in trying to combat homelessness. Mental health services are at the county level. The city of Fresno does not offer mental health services, and so we definitely need to ensure that they have the resources for that population. I know that there is a very big need, not only in District 6, but overall for the city of Fresno. Many of our residents have to go out of town to get the necessary help that they do need. Reality, we're not going to get a lot of resources from the state budget. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what that looks like. Fresno recently lost $100 million for downtown. And so in order to combat homelessness, I see nonprofits, I see faith-based groups working collaboratively together. I feel that that's a part of the puzzle, and then utilizing those in the mental health space to work with this population.
Nick, you're next.
I tell you what, I wish that faith-based group and volunteer nonprofits could solve this problem for us. But unfortunately, you're familiar with the adage, I can hope in one hand, and I forget the rest of the adage, but hoping is not going to work. We've got to take action. Now, how do you do this? Homelessness does not exist in a silo. It's not a vacuum. For those of you familiar with fire science, fire doesn't exist in a vacuum. You need a fuel, you need heat, you need oxygen, and then you get the fire. Homelessness doesn't exist outside of drug use. It doesn't exist outside of mental health. And it doesn't exist outside of crime. Now, to use another metaphor, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? To think that you can just throw money at homelessness and it'll be fixed is naive, it's irresponsible, and it's using our money to do it. So what do I think we need to do? Well, it's like when you go to the hospital. We need triage. We need to figure out what the individual stories are that need help. Some people are just spouses who have been, beaten to a pulp by their spouse and have to take their children and have no one in town and no other resources but to go out on the streets. Some of them are criminals, right, who have been paroled, potentially they're felons, and they have no opportunity for follow-on employment, and so they don't get it. Some of them are legitimately addicted to some sort of substance. So as far as the county allowing them to be addicted to substances and continuing the needle replacement and the pipe providing programs, that's not helping our drug program. As far as the crime is concerned, the fact that we continually give our police department and our sheriffs not enough cells to be able to put people in jail when they need to be in jail is a disgrace. We heard the county supervisors up here just prior to us talking about the fact that the county currently has six beds that it can offer. So is our answer going to come from the county? No. So relying on county mental health or our city council members who continuously pass the buck and say that, oh, homelessness, that's a county issue. That's an abdication of responsibility. In my environment, if you're flying a helicopter and you say something is not your problem, it's someone else's, guess what? People die. And who is responsible for that? Well, it doesn't matter because they're not there anymore. They went down with the ship. We cannot do this with homelessness. I suppose I'll stop there.
Good. And Raj, thank you.
So I agree with Nick. When we use the word homelessness or unhoused, I've learned as I serve on the Fresno Police Neighborhood Watch Northeast District as a board trustee, I've learned a lot last year and this year. And one of the captains said that the likelihood of it truly being a homeless issue is slim. It is probably mental health and drug addiction. And the captain said, what we need is, we need mental health experts talking to those individuals rather than a police officer in uniform. I'm sorry. My class, I took a program through the chamber called Leadership Fresno, and we were going to solve the homeless problem in 2017. And what we advocated for was real change Fresno. Don't give your dollars or your cents to that individual that's sitting in the median, perhaps at Blackstone and Herndon or outside Costco. There are agencies in town, such as the Poverello House, that have, I believe, almost 30 people, and their program is called HOPE, and they call it Street Navigation. The city of Fresno has a program called HEART. They're the homeless response team. But of the 12 people at the city of Fresno, only 2 are experts when it comes to mental health and drug addiction. So we really need our county to step up and provide more experts when it comes to mental health and drug addiction to help these individuals get the help that they need. And we have the help that they need. But let's keep in mind, not every single person, we have about 3,500 homeless or unhoused individuals, not everyone is going to want our help.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Cress, and Nick will be first to answer.
So the question is, the city's general fund is expected to take a hit during the next budget season, and the state budget is also in crisis. The city has also recently hired a significant amount of new police officers and is paying them higher salaries. How would you balance maintaining current police staffing levels with other general fund departments? What other investments are worth protecting to improve public safety besides police officer staffing?
All right, thank you for the question. Well, I won't go into detail on what city services we need to feel safe. Everyone knows what those are. It's our first responders. It's your police, it's your firefighters, it's your paramedics at the base level, all right, for a city. But I can tell you that not being an accountant myself, just looking through this last budget that was just passed, $1.8 something billion, I can tell you about 22.9 million of that was either emergency funds for departments that don't spend that amount in 5 years, or fees that the city pays the county out of taxpayer money. They can be better spent elsewhere. You were to tell me if you were at $22.9 million, we couldn't pay for some more police officers. So it's not a binary question. It's not, do you want safety or do you want a larger general fund? And making it a binary question is a little intellectually disingenuous, right? I feel like we need to look at where we're spending money. Let me give you an example right here. We spend about $9.5 million in this current budget just on the city paying the county to use their landfill. That means when they come to your house, when they come to my house and pick up our trash, we are essentially glad-handing, paying ourselves $9.5 million. So let's talk about some costs here. Your average police officer in the city of Fresno makes just over $56,000. How many police officers could you hire with just $9.5 million of trash fees? Average fire truck costs $750,000. How many fire trucks could we get with that $9.5 million, not to mention the rest of it that's been irresponsibly spent in the city. So I feel like as far as the general fund is concerned, that is absolutely an issue, sure. But it doesn't take a genius to look through the budget and see these inconsistencies in where they are spending, and by they, of course, I mean city council, where they are spending our tax money. Our first priority should be safety. Then it should be the welfare of the individuals who live in the city. After that, yes, there are a bunch of priorities. But first and foremost, if people don't feel safe, people don't want to live here. And if people don't want to live here, it's not the Fresno I grew up in, and that's not the message that I want to send on city council. Thank you.
Raj, your next answer, followed by Molly.
So the city budget is like someone wanting to start a new business, right? They go to the bank and they have this idea and they write a business plan, then they make projections, and then we look at cash flows. This is how City Hall and our budget needs to be evaluated. Yes, there will always be fluctuations in the economy. We can look at 2020 for that and our COVID. The number of businesses that we lost as a city to neighboring cities is atrocious. Clovis, Madera, Visalia. We have so many business owners that no longer want to do business in Fresno. And what does that mean to us as residents? The loss of tax revenue, the loss of jobs. And so we need to look at our city like a business and have a 3 to 5 year plan, not annually. So that would be my.
Staffing for both fire and police are at an all-time high right now, so that is positive for our city. Some of these positions are from a federal grant, so that does have a finite timeline, which will need to be evaluated. As a mom of 3 young boys, I want to be able to take them to Martin Park, Woodward Park, and Keith Tice and feel safe. And so I feel it's imperative that we do have public safety and that our neighbors feel safe in the entire city of Fresno. When you currently look at our budget, we're about 10% reserves. And since we are not going to get the resources that the city thought they would from the state budget, we're going to have to be even more critical of our budget and where expenses are being spent. As a small business owner, I look at this as income and expenses. So what are we spending, and then what is coming in from the city for resources? When you look at current services for both police and fire, they do vary across the city based on caseload and where the highest need is currently happening. So it is interesting to look at those numbers across the city and see how they vary from District 6 all the way to District 1.
Our next question comes from Juliana, and Raj, you'll answer first.
Fresno has a road safety crisis for pedestrians and bicyclists. Friant Road continues to be one of the city's most dangerous roads. Fresno in recent years has been experimenting with different policy ideas, from reducing speed limits to red light enforcement to high visibility crosswalks and protected bike lanes and trails. If elected, what would be your highest priority to improve traffic safety for people walking and biking along city streets?
So I travel Friant, Shepherd North. I know the gentleman that owned, his son that actually videotaped, I think it's on YouTube, called Friant Roulette. My kids, they live in that area as well, so it is of great concern. And so my number one, if elected, would be to reduce speed limits. I know they've made some changes right there at Friant and Shepherd with the light changing, and changing a light by 1 or 2 seconds can save lives. So reducing speed limits, and I know that's going to be difficult, especially with the younger adults that have the fancy sports cars and they want to be seen going, 70 miles per hour. I have seen, since that young lady passed away, I think she was 23 years old, I've seen more motorcycle officers, which does help let people know that we are, you are being watched. And saving lives is important because that could be my child or my grandchild. And yeah.
Molly, you're next.
As a cyclist, I'm well aware of the challenges that we see not only on Friant, Shepherd, but downtown as well. Over the past 10 years, the city of Fresno has made progress in implementing more bike lanes, especially the northern part of the city of Fresno on your way out to Clovis. You will see that. Unfortunately, in District 6, there are more fatalities with cyclists. There was, in the fall, the Fresno State professor who had 5 children, Adela, she was killed on a cyclist, on a bicycle, a road bicycle, because individuals, they race on Friant. And so these individuals need to be held accountable for their actions, and that does come down to what the speed limit is. Another thing that I would like to look at, and that I have heard from neighbors in District 6, is speed bumps in certain areas of District 6. Certain populations, they have tried to implement speed bumps, especially that are high traffic areas for children. So I think that's a great avenue to look at to slow down these drivers. And there are also programs out there to work with drivers and cell phones. I'm sure most of us have a personal story driving and seeing someone on their cell phone. So these are all ideas that I have that I would like to continue to look at to make Fresno safer.
Nick, go ahead.
So in order to make our roads safer, there are definitely things that we can do in the city or we can allow city council to do that will harm us. One of those would be continue allowing our motorcycle cops or our police in general to fall off the payroll or go to other cities to finish out their retirement service time. We could also put in a gas station right there at the entrance of Woodward Lakes. That will drive up traffic problems right there. But there are also things we can do to help ourselves. Now let me explain how seriously City Council takes the safety of our streets. Speed bumps were mentioned before. They call them TCDs, traffic control devices. They come in a bunch of different forms. I was walking last week, talking with 2 gentlemen, Greg and Jeff, who live over in the vicinity of Willow and Teague. And they said they had gone to the city before with their concerns asking for a speed bump. They've got about a quarter mile of a street, a residential road, that speed was an issue. They have families, they have children out there playing, sometimes a basketball may roll into the street. And the city told them, we are not going to build a speed bump for you. And their reasoning for which? It's perfect, it was a rhetorical question. The reason was emissions. The city was worried about emissions. The city is worried that their children will develop valley fever 15 years from then, and that one speed bump is going to have more of a negative effect on the health of the entire valley than being hit by a literal car. That is how seriously the city takes speed in residential roads. So one, again, you're going to see this be a trend. It's an abdication of responsibility. How can that seriously be your answer if someone's worried about their kids playing outside to say, no, I'm going to have to put up with your child being hit by a car? Or even better, we're going to use the speed control method that we've been using on knees, which is potholes, and we'll see how that slows the cars down. It's not a serious conversation taking place in City Hall. So you need someone who's willing to look past the arbitrary or the abstract, like emissions, and get down to keeping people's families safe. Yeah, I think speed limits are great. I don't think lowering the speed limit on Friant is going to lower the actual speed on Friant, but I think that putting in speed bumps at places that make sense once you do a real analysis of it could actually have an impact and maybe keep some people safer.
Our next question comes from Crescencio, and Molly, you'll answer first.
While Fresno continues to tout a nearly historic low unemployment rate, many residents are still feeling the sting of groceries, gas bills, and rent. City leaders have often used tax incentives to lure warehouse jobs to Fresno to diversify the city's economy and bring in more jobs. But the jobs are of varying quality. If elected, what would you do to improve the number of well-paying, above minimum wage jobs in the city?
I think a great example of a company that has had a major impact in Fresno is Amazon. When you look at the variety of jobs that they have brought to our city, I think it's very impressive. And they have not only increased jobs, but they have also got involved in different community initiatives, and they're involved with other organizations and making Fresno a better way of life. And so when we look at why Amazon came here and where they're located, we need to find businesses that want to come to Fresno and what makes Fresno an attractive place to live. Earlier, you've heard about the individuals that are coming from the Bay Area and Southern California because of home prices. They're also coming here because of the quality of education, especially in District 6, there are certain individuals that want to live in a Clovis Unified School District. So we need to find these business partners, Amazon being one. When you look at the variety of startups that are downtown, there's also some in the agriculture space. Our valley thrives on agriculture. That's the number one industry in Fresno right now. So we are able to attract global exporters, importers that have businesses in Fresno. I would look at those different businesses that have opportunities for a variety of workforce, especially what's being done with vocational education in Fresno is allowing business partners to come. The collaborations that we're seeing with C-Tech downtown and Clovis High School with their vocational education programs, they're exposing students to career paths, but also industry partners that have careers for those individuals once they graduate.
Nick, you're next, followed by Raj.
So I will say I'm on board with Molly here with a lot of this. The vocational training, fantastic. I decided it was important, so last semester I spent some time, I signed up, I got registered, and I went and worked as a substitute teacher in Clovis Unified for a good 2.5 months. And we had students who would depart class and they would go to CART, but they'd go to CART to get out of English class and history to go learn metalworking and to go learn woodworking and to go learn mechanical engineering, things that are gonna help them down the road. Now, jobs are great. Jobs is also very vague. So I don't just want to bring jobs. I want to bring careers, meaning lifelong careers with vertical possibilities for these individuals. And I want local careers. I want them to be educated here in Fresno. I want them to get a profession here in Fresno that they can be trained in. And I want them to work and provide for our economy here in Fresno. And eventually, you know what? I'd like them to retire here in Fresno and raise their kids and send them to the same schools that we all live by. That's what I'd like to see. Now, as long as our city has the deal, the project labor agreement stating that anything over $1 million has to be farmed out to the unions who don't bring in permanent labor, who bring in labor from other parts of the state, sometimes other states, in order to build what we need built here in Fresno, and then they leave. They refuse the opportunity for the mom and pop shops, for our local plumbers and local pipe fitters and local concrete pourers and our carpenters and our roofers to do their job and compete for those same jobs. So are we really doing ourselves any favors as long as we allow the unions to just import seasonal work to come here to Fresno to build the things we need and then leave? No, I don't think we are. I want to work with the mom and pop shops. I want to work with the merit shops, the non-union providers of labor, and allow this free market economy to work the way it was supposed to. Allow people to offer up the best solution for the most affordable price in order to bring our costs down and bring our jobs and careers right back here to Fresno. We'll get into Measure E when we get into Measure E, and they're somewhat related, but that's what I want to see, not just jobs. I want to see local careers, and that's the way I'd like to do it. Thank you for the question.
On Saturday, I met a young man. I think he was around 26 years old, and he moved here from the Central Coast. And he said to me, he said, and I agree with this. I think sometimes as Fresnans, we forget all that we have and we focus on all the negativity. He said, we have an airport. And so he moved here from the Central Coast. He says, we have an airport. He said, we have healthcare options. We've got school districts. He said, I can do better here. Why would I move back to the Central Coast where I would have to pay more for housing and probably take a pay cut? So I agree with both Molly and Nick. When my kids were little, I've got a 34-year-old and a 31-year-old. It was, you must go get a 4-year degree. You must get a 4-year degree. And now I see people coming out of Fresno State with their 4-year degrees and they can't find jobs. So I'm a big supporter of these technical careers. And how lucky are we that we've got Fresno City College, we've got Fresno State. This healthcare industry is only going to grow, and we need more individuals working in those places. I even said to my son, I said, you could go do a 15-month course or an 18-month course and be a radiologist and make a decent living in Fresno. We've got the pharmacy school. I know it's in Clovis, but how lucky are we that we've got a family that has built that so that our kids don't have to go to LA or San Francisco. We've got a DO school. So we have a lot of things that are positive for our kids and grandkids. Thank you.
Candidates, you've been so efficient in your answers that I'd like to invite our audience to ask a question if there's someone out there with a burning question.
Young lady in the eggplant in the back.
Yes, yes, please. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry, I don't know how to refer to you.
This may be totally off subject, but I'd like to ask what your plan for the IHSS program would be. In-home supportive services. At this point in time, the Board of Supervisors is saying they are going to cut our Kaiser healthcare benefits, just eliminate it. That affects me in a huge way and many, many other providers. And it also affects the recipients. The recipients who are veterans, retired, teachers, nurses, etc., all kinds of people in the previous workforce that are aged, blind, and disabled. They need a strong workforce. And so I realize the economy is not great and budget cuts are everywhere, but the program needs to be upheld and not cut because the people who receive services
I think we have the general idea. I do want to mention that that is a county program. Am I correct there? So our candidates here are in the city, so you might have an answer to some degree, but I'm not sure it's in our lane.
I've got about a 15-second answer.
Okay, we'll go for it. Yeah, first answering this question would be Nick, you.
Sure. All righty. How perfect. So, in about 15, 20 seconds, I come from the military. Veterans care is something that is close to my heart. As a fiscal conservative, I am not one for raising taxes. I am not one for more city expenditures. But taking money from the weak or the vulnerable is cowardly, and it removes that care from veterans and those who need it most. So as far as my stance on it, no. If I had any say, the county wouldn't take any of that. I have individuals in my family who both need that care and those who provide that care. It's not just professionals. It's those in the family who have the time and the means to be able to take care of them as well. It's cowardice. I wouldn't allow that to happen to Fresno's veterans if I had any say in that.
Thank you. Next answer, Raj, do you have some comment on that?
I really don't have any expertise in this. I mean, we all deserve to be taken care of, right? We live in a great country where healthcare should be affordable for all, especially our seniors. Yes.
And Molly, care to comment on this?
My twin sister works in healthcare, mental health care, so I am well aware of the ongoing battle and discussion going on with work that you provide as well as your colleagues. And something that her and I have had a big discussion on is talking to her representatives. So I don't know who your board of supervisor contact is, but the nice thing with the budget for Fresno City is there are budget hearing meetings. And even though time is, they do give you an allocation, all of us have both the opportunity and the right to attend these meetings and voice our concerns. So I definitely would encourage you to do that.
Thank you all. That was our one question from the audience. I'd now... Excuse me. I think we're going to go ahead and ask for your closing statements. We're right at the end of our hour. And we'll start in alphabetical order. How's my alphabet doing? Oh, that leaves Molly first. So, yes, by last name. And you have 1 minute.
I want to thank everybody for coming out on a school night. It's been great to see the interest not only tonight, but overall. It is an early primary this year. We're less than 28 days away. And through this process, I continue to learn something new every single day from those in District 6 and those out of District 6, whether it's homelessness, public safety, budget, having a young family. My husband and I, we have 3 young boys, and I want to be able to go to Woodward Park and not have Domenico to go with us. I want to feel safe at Martin Park as well. And they're my why. They're the reasons why I am why we are putting ourselves out there and want to make Fresno City the place to be for all residents.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Nick.
I do appreciate everyone coming out, and I do appreciate the Nick's Got Your 6 hats on as well. Listen, I'm going to be very honest with you. If you are happy with the status quo, if you like city council being controlled by families and special interest groups, like 2 or 3 families, I may not be the candidate for you. But if you think that city council should represent the demographics of the city it represents, if you think that the veterans who have served our country, who have moved back home to the valley that raised them, deserve a voice, well, I'm here to tell you, I've got your back. Or we say in the military, I've got your 6. Now, from walking 22,000 houses, every single neighborhood around this entire district, in the summer, in the winter, in the rain, from doing that, it's clear that many of you have my back as well. And it means the world to me. I'm very grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for this opportunity and for my opponents. And it should show you, there are 4 of us running in this race on paper. There are 3 of us who wanted to take the time to show up here in front of you and talk to you and give you a glimpse into who we are. 3. So thank you again. I would very much appreciate your vote. And regardless, I'm going to keep working for it every day. Promise.
Thank you. And Raj?
In my 40 years in banking, I've had the privilege to help many people. I've helped first-time home buyers. I've helped small business owners create businesses and thousands of jobs. I currently today work with some of the largest companies here in the Central Valley. I've negotiated my whole life. I solve problems and I provide solutions. I'm the only candidate that has District 6 experience, and I also have City Hall experience. I feel as though everything that I've done over the last 40 years has prepared me for this District 6 City Council. I also feel that having worked with all the different types of people, I have the communication and the skill set, because we are a very diverse district. I've walked from Bullard all the way to the gated communities out on Copper, and there's huge diversity here in our district. Thank you.
It's now time for us to thank our candidates and our questioners for this evening's forum. Thank you. The next candidate forum, hosted by our dynamic team, and that'll be for Fresno County Board of Supervisors District 3, will be held on Monday, February 12th at 6 p.m. at the John Dodson Theater, located at 710 Van Ness Ave downtown. Don't forget to pick up information. Our candidates have left some, CMAC has some, and of course the League of Women Voters has some as well. All candidates who responded to the League queries are included on our website. Fresno Land has a voter guide at fresnoland.org with reported coverage on each local candidate, their endorsements, and their donors. KVPR will also be providing up-to-date reporting on local, state, and national elections for the March primary. Thank you again for attending, and good night.